I see the clock has hit 12 o'clock and I want to make sure that we get started on time. So welcome. Appreciate you guys joining us today for the MPSA overview. We have a beautiful day here in Texas and want to share our wonderful programs with you. Specifically with this webinar, we are going to focus on the Public Service and Administration Department and the degrees that they offer and how we support our students in those degrees through career services and through some programming. So welcome to this. We're going to answer some questions in the chat section, or at the end of this, we can also unmute. I don't look at the chat too much while I'm talking, so just be patient if I don't see it right away, and we'll get moving from here. Speakers today are going to be myself. I'm Catherine Meyer, Director of Admissions and Recruitment here at the Bush School. Been here for about 20 years. I've seen a lot of classes come through with some amazing students. And then right along with me is Matthew Upton. He's the Assistant Dean of Career and Student Services. He has also been here about 20 years. We love working with the students and can't wait to continue that cycle, getting people into the careers that are of interest to them. So the Master of Public Service agenda that we're going to cover today is I'm going to start with the degrees and the kinds that we offer between the MPSA, the undergrad 5-year degree. We partner with Texas A&M in a couple of different departments. There are a couple of PhD collaborations where people will start with the Master of Public Service and then they can transition and apply to the programs in both education and public health. We're going to talk about the tracks and concentrations, the capstone projects that we do in lieu of research, the curriculum overviews and what those look like in terms of courses and the variety of courses you can take. Then I'll transition to the admissions side of it and talk specifically about the admissions process and the timeline, what you need, the statistics of what the class look like for this coming year, the funding that we provide to students, how much that results into your cost. I've broken that out by both in-state and for international students. Then Matt will come on and cover the professional development, a little bit more about how career services supports our students, and then we'll cover some of the organizations and the student groups. And then we'll stop the recording and go to your questions and answer. So again, if there's anything that's on your mind, just keep in mind, throw that out there later through the chat and I'll grab them when I can. So I'm going to start with just this simple slide that is seen on most of these webinars. What is the Bush School of Government and Public Service? We are both an undergraduate and a graduate school now here at Texas A&M University. We're one of the smallest. We opened in 1997. First class graduated with a whopping 19 students in 1999. Now we're bringing in anywhere between 80 to 100 students per the two bigger classes that we have with Master of Public Service and Master of International Affairs. So over time, we've graduated roughly 2,800 master's alumni in those programs. Now we consist of master's degrees that cover a number of different venues, right? So 5 of those degrees are here in College Station. We're going to talk about one of them with the Master of Public Service today. There are 2 international affairs focused degrees that are set in Washington, D.C., and then there's one executive online Master of Public Service that is also available. Now, I will not cover that program other than just one slide of general information because that program is run through our Office of Extended Education. So they'll offer their own webinars and you can contact them through their information through Bush School Online. And I will feature that later in this slideshow, but I won't really talk about them. There are also 6 graduate certificates that are offered both online and on campus. Some of those partner very well with this degree. So I'll cover those briefly, but if you do have interest, you'll, again, reach out to Office of Extended Education. Now, in general, we're preparing students for careers in nonprofits, the NGOs world, all levels of government, policy areas, education, environment, health, security, government contractors, private industry. Bush School of Government and Public Service, that public service is built into our name. So probably 70 to 75% of our students from year to year tend to go into those fields, working for the communities, working for their government to give back to others. And so we kind of live that mission. So that leads to who are we looking for? That's motivated, smart, hardworking leaders. people who are ready to make a difference in whatever capacity that might be for them. Could be local level, working with their government and the people for services. And it could be for those that want to do more of emergency response, maybe going out and helping those that have faced these world disasters that are happening more and more. This is calling for service, especially public service, and then that maturity and passionate, making sure you're ready for grad school, that you know what you're getting ready for and done your homework on that. At the Bush School, you're going to work individually and as part of a team. So going to have to shake off that lone wolf and realize that a lot of the work we do in the careers that our students typically follow is as a team, and you have to learn how to work with others. So you're going to be able to learn about yourself through Myers-Briggs assessments, some other things that we have through workshops that you can take part in. But you're also going to develop your knowledge, skills, and abilities through the classes that you're taking, and prepare for a professional life wherever it leads. Not everyone's going to stay with the same career and job that they started when they first graduated. So you're going to get a lot of skills that you could move to different career paths as you decide in time, I'm ready to switch, or just a great career opportunity came forward. And you're going to build some lifelong personal and professional connections, both here at the school and maybe through Texas A&M Connections, which has a huge Aggie network. All right, to start with the Master of Public Service and Administration. So the features of this degree, it is a 2-year degree. Most students who attend this are full-time. We do have a few that are part-time. It may take them 3 years to do this while they're working. But the majority of our students are here doing 12 hours fall, 12 spring, summer internship, 12 fall, 12 spring. That's how you get those 48 credit hour degrees. And we only start each fall. So there's no spring admission that we're working with. You get to build a degree plan that's relevant to your interest based off the kinds of tracks and concentrations that you're choosing. You're going to get faculty and career services advising along the way. So know that you're not left alone. You can go bounce ideas, career trajectories off with others, and then be able to put that back into that degree plan and take the classes that are going to help you. You will be asked to complete a relevant summer internship unless you already have some more significant work that they can waive that and say, all right, you've done that. Or students who are working part-time. Attending school part-time, they're working full-time. They don't need the internship, they're already in the workforce. You're also going to collaborate on a client capstone project. This is a year-long project for this degree. You will have a choice in some of the classes, and I'll cover that in another slide in a few. And then optional, you can earn a graduate certificate. So I'll talk about that in a few slides as well. So basically, one unique opportunity, because we do offer an executive master of public service that is offered online, which, just to say that, it requires 5 years of experience. You can have some flexibility on how you take courses because you can do some of them online. Just realize if you are taking the majority of your classes here in College Station, you can only do up to 7 of your courses because the majority of them, over 50%, have to be done in the modality of how you enrolled. So if you're here in College Station, at least 9 of those have to be in person. The other 7, you can mix them in. Just realize if you do mix online classes, they're going to cost you a little bit more. It costs $1,500 more to do that, each class you do. And it only applies to electives. You have to do your core courses in person. Now, for the tracks and concentrations, there are 3 tracks that we will promote. I put on here choose 1, but we have seen people who choose 2. And that is okay because the concentrations are elective. So you have enough courses to be able to build your courses how you want. So someone may want to do both public management and public policy, and that is possible here. Now, nonprofit management is that 3rd track. And then the concentrations, if someone wants to develop a certain skill set or a certain policy area, then they can zero in on those and take classes that are going to build them some focus area specialties. So you've got analytical methods, cyber, education, environment, health, homeland security, international NGOs, state and local government, city management. And then students will also come through and sometimes design their own. Maybe they're working with housing issues or transportation or agriculture, or political speech writing. There's all kinds of areas you can take with this. And what you're doing is basically working with your faculty advisor, and you can take courses elsewhere at Texas A&M. So in other departments. Just realize there are going to be some restrictions with that. You have to get permissions from the teachers in those other courses, but it is quite possible. And many of our students do create their own individually designed concentrations. Now, the curriculum consists of 10 core courses and 6 electives. Now, some of those core courses, they're track oriented. So you really do have a choice. They're not just hard and fast, because it does depend on the track that you're choosing. So the first semester, you have to do these 4 courses: economic analysis, quant methods, foundations of public service, and nonprofit. It just gives you a great foundation of learning a little bit about each thing. And then by the second semester in the spring, you are now starting to take track classes. And in that case, you're now going to start zero in on, okay, I want to do public policy analysis. And there's going to be some required courses, and then there'll be a bunch of electives that you can choose from. So you'll have a choice, even though it doesn't say elective, there are technically more than 6 electives. By the time you do your summer internship, where you are working with career services to get some leads on jobs, you're using your own resources, you'll come back, and in that final year, you're going to be doing a capstone project that is built in, where you're working with a client with a number of your other fellow classmates. And then you're back to your track requirement and some electives. So leaves a lot of flexibility. I decided to list some of those courses here. So for instance, the samples from public policy analysis, you can see this is a handful, like 7 or 8 listed out of close to 20, 25 courses. And that's true of both of these. Now, some of the classes that are listed under public policy analysis may be some of the same classes that you would see under analytical methods, or you might see a few of those listed under education policy, because that's just, they're listed for you, however you want to take them. Public management, same idea. They've got a big list. Here's some samples. And then same with nonprofit management. But if you're in the nonprofit world and you want to now focus on some international NGOs, that is a concentration you could do. So you can get even more zeroed in on that kind of work. So those concentrations, some students don't choose them, but many do, because they do want to develop a specialty, maybe in cybersecurity, or maybe with working in the Texas education system and just learning more about policy. So you have some flexibility in doing that. Now, back to that capstone. This is your final year. You're doing a 9-month consulting project. So the faculty are going out and finding clients that need some consulting work. And then you guys are going in and hearing from those faculty what those projects are for that year. And you're going to then rank order your top ones, your top 3. There's usually 7 to 8 options. And then you're going to be placed on one of those capstone projects, and you're going to serve it with between typically around 7 to 8, but it could be as few as 4 and as much as 10 or 12. So you're basically taking all the progress that you've been making and learning, and you're applying that knowledge into this capstone. So you may have to go do some legwork in Canvas and get some information back. You may be sending out a survey and collecting it. And now you're going to run some analysis on it. And then you're reporting back to that client what you have done. Some of it is more research. Some of it is more foundation survey work. So you're going to be working as your team to find out what roles you're going to play and who's doing the research, who's doing the editing, who's doing the presentations, and just figure out for the course of that 9 months how to get the best quality product to that client. Now, the faculty member who's running that will be working with your group, but this is largely student run, and they're just there for guidance. So you're going to produce that written report in an oral presentation. And these reports are substantial. Many times the ones that I've seen in the past are over 100 pages. Some have even been longer. And that does include all the works cited that you're having to do. And, you know, again, the results, the survey results, and then the recommendations often. The clients that our faculty are gathering mirror some of the same sectors that our internship and employment do, and that's state agencies, nonprofits, local, private, You name it. If you see one who is maybe hosting one of this capstone, they probably do some kind of employment option too for some of our students. And in fact, some of our students in the capstones have been hired by their clients. So it just depends on how that looks. So I wrote down the ones that we are working with this year. So this fall of 2023, we had 7 different options that students could rank order. Some of them are very specific, others are quite, general in their title. But you can see that the client was Allies Against Slavery. You got the Department of Homeland Security National Operations Center, the Forest Service. There's an immigration, refugee kind of emphasis, and another one on nonprofits and philanthropy. So the students will work for those projects and then report those back out somewhere around that April timeframe. Now, that Texas A&M connection I mentioned earlier, especially when you're developing your own concentration, you can take courses in other parts of A&M. So regularly, even if you're focused on, let's say, an area that had to do with education policy, some of those courses are ours that our faculty have an expertise in. But a listing at the bottom of those would also include courses that are being offered through Department of Education. So you're going to see a wide range of interest areas from management, information systems to rangeland and wildlife and fisheries, communications, health and kinesiology, sociology, public health. You just have to get permission from those faculty to take their courses and permission from your faculty on your degree plan to do that. Now, this one may not be as interest to those on here, but the Texas A&M does have what are called joint degrees. These are 3+2 programs. So students who are doing a bachelor's degree here at Texas A&M already in political science, economics, sociology, ag econ, and rangeland, wildlife, and fisheries, those students can decide, I really want to work and continue on with my master's, and they can go directly into our program by their senior year. So those students need to be working with their advisors in their undergrad department, make sure they're taking the right kinds of classes, setting some of them aside because our graduate courses will give them credit. Then you have to have at least a GPA of a 3.25 or better by the time you enroll. So students need to be aware of this so that by the time they're a junior, somewhere around that 70 to 80 hour mark, they should be applying or they're going to miss their mark. We only enroll in the fall, so you got to make sure you're on time for it. And typically you're enrolling with 102 or more hours because it's going to take the full 102 hours to have already completed your undergrad requirements. The benefits is you are double counting some courses of hours towards your undergraduate degree, so it saves you some time, but it's also saving you some money because you're paying undergrad costs. And you don't have to apply with an application fee because you're not working through GradCrash. You're working through an internal app that we've built for these students. But you will earn both your bachelor's and your master's in 5 years. And for some that are moving quickly, it could be 4 years. Typically, we enroll about a dozen 3+2 students into our Master of Public Service. So we're looking at quite a range. It's usually a handful, mainly from political science and economics, but maybe a few from the others. Now, the two that I mentioned earlier, you're already going to be a student in the Master of Public Service, but if you find out as you're taking courses here that I really do want to go ahead and get my PhD and I want to work with education policy, you can do that through this program, this collaborative program. So it's an agreement that we've set up with the College of Education and Human Development. And these are those that are looking for an academic career with education policy research. So consulting agencies, education agencies. You're going to have 111 credit hours over 5 years. So we've listed these programs. You're going to be applying by your second semester, so by February. So you've got basically a semester to get a feel if this works for you, maybe talk to some of the faculty, and then make sure that you're applying so that you can start in the summer. And basically, it's just giving you the fast track so that you're on target to start maybe taking one of their courses with 3 of ours. And so all of this is laid out, but one exists with education policy, same idea with health policy. So this is health policy and management that we've agreed with the School of Public Health. So this is for those that want to do a career of academic research and consulting with health agencies. Same thing, 111 credit hours over 5 years. But the way that you apply is going to be different between odd and even years. So when you're ready for that, you just pay attention to when you need to apply. But again, you're already going to be a Bush School student here. It's not something you apply at the same time. And that will give you an option for a PhD fast track. Now, MPSA rankings, I just like to mention this really quick. Now, I knew U.S. News and World Report just gave us some more that I haven't updated, but we were tied number 28 with the best public affairs programs, and that part I don't think changed. I think mainly it was Texas A&M in general, and their rankings just moved up. But that puts our program in the top 10% nationally. So we really are a wonderful program here, preparing students in very great professions. But subgroups were ranked number 8 in Homeland Security, and you can see the rest: public management, nonprofit, and public policy all have rankings. And this is out of probably 300 to 350 schools, because most major universities have MPA style programs. So we're doing great to be listed this high. Now, those graduate certificates, for those that want to maybe supply a focus on an area, and they can take courses. Let's say they're already doing the nonprofit management focus anyway. They can apply for the certificate and pay that application fee for them, and also then receive an additional credential. So by taking all your nonprofit classes, you do 4 of them, it'll also earn you a nonprofit certificate. So it's just another credential to highlight on your resume or on your transcript. So the 2 that work the most closely with us is nonprofit management and public management. And there's also students who will start those early. Maybe they graduate in December and need something to bide their time over the spring. And this is a great way to go ahead and start and take a couple classes beforehand. Or they want to test the waters and see how hard the classes are. Maybe they didn't have the best GPA for undergrad, and by doing well in the certificates, they can show that they could do the graduate level work. So this works for a handful of students. They aren't as cheap as we are because, again, if you're living outside of the U.S., you're going to be charged that, and you will not be able to receive those non-resident waivers that we do that I'll talk about later. So the costs are a little bit more, but some people do find them helpful. There's also certificates in geospatial intelligence, and we're not quite sure about that cybersecurity one. It's being rebuilt, so that one is not going to be in play for another couple of years. But certificates can complement the MPSA, and you can do them online or on campus, and you can create your own focus areas. And Texas A&M seniors can enroll early for these. But if you have any questions about graduate certificates, that's done through our Office of Extended Ed. That is contacting Bush School online at tamu.edu. And then I mentioned that we do offer an online Executive Master of Public Service Administration degree. They offer tracks a little bit differently. They've added the Homeland Security in there rather than policy. But it is a 2 to 3 year degree for most people because they're usually working professionals. It takes 39 credit hours to earn it. It does require 5 years of full-time public service experience. 3 years of that have to be in the mid to upper management role. They have rolling applications, so they accept for fall, spring, and summer. They do require a capstone project. Courses are online, with the exception that we do require them to come to College Station for 2 different 1-week residencies. So they may do one in the summer of 23 and another one in the summer of 24, and they have to be here for that 1 week. And then you can transfer up to 12 credit hours from one of the certificates into either the online eMPSA or even our MPSA that's done in person. So again, Bush School Online, that's all I'm going to say about them. I don't talk about their costs. I don't know them. But Office of Extended Ed at that email can help you. And I'll also put that email at the end. All right, now I'm going to transition to admissions for a few minutes. So application requirements for this program is submitting a GradCast application. Now, the only exception to that is if someone's already in a program here at Texas A&M and decides to add on to another master's, and that's an internal paperwork that they fill out. And then those 5 years I mentioned, they're already here for undergrad, they do an internal application. Everyone else has to submit that GradCast application. The application fee is $89 for domestic. It's $114 for international. I've already answered 2 different questions in the chat of whether or not we can offer waivers. We do not, with the exception unless someone is part of Peace Corps, AmeriCorps, and a couple of other agreements, because essentially we have to pay Texas A&M for them, and I don't have a lot of budget money to cover those. So I'm honoring the ones, and we pay thousands of dollars for just the ones that are coming from those other organizations. So unfortunately, you're just going to have to figure out how to pay for that part. And then unofficial transcripts is all we need at the time of your application. Their official will be required if you decide to enroll with us. 3 letters of recommendation. I will say that typically faculty want to read from other faculty. So I recommend most of the time, at least 2 out of the 3 should be academic. Doesn't mean you have to. If you've been out for a while or you were struggling to make a connection with someone, get some supervisors through internships, organizations, work, and have them supply them. Just make sure that you've vetted with them what you've been doing and make sure that they're positive ones. And then we're also going to need a resume. So update that. 2 pages is fine. Just don't go over that. And the statement of purpose, make sure you're telling us where it is you're coming from, what you're interested in, what your passions are. We're just looking for a good fit and that you've written that statement well. GRE test is optional. So you do not have to take that test unless you feel like it is a strength or unless you're trying to make up for a deficiency in maybe a poor GPA. We're encourage it if your GPA is below a 3.2, that's out of a 4.0. But there are some who still will not turn them in. I will say last year we probably had about 12 to 24 who turned them in. English proficiency test scores, if you're an international student, unless it's met in another way, for instance, if you come from a country that already teaches in English, then you would have to supply a test score. So there's a number of ways you can have it waived, like I just mentioned, or if you took the GRE with certain scores, or you can supply TOEFL and IELTS scores. So those are on our website. And if you need questions answered about the admissions and application, you would reach out to Ashley at bushkillapplications@tamu.edu, and that's all over our website on that admissions section. As far as the timeline, we opened that application in August each year. And then we're working with students all through the fall, trying to get them to apply. That December 15th priority funding is important because we need time to process those applications and get them to faculty before classes start in mid-January. If people wait until that January 12th deadline that's posted on the website, that's a final deadline. You're bumping up against that, and they may not be in the best mood sometimes in evaluating these. So get them in early. But when we hit that mid-January deadline, we're also going to reevaluate how our app's looking. Have we had some inquiries? Sometimes we'll push that back. In the past few years, we've even pushed it back into March, sometimes April, but April's even starting to be a little bit late. So really try to get that in because we're giving money out by the first part of March. And if you apply past that January deadline, there's no guarantee we're going to have time to process it and get it evaluated because we're going to handle the other people who hit the deadline first. So we schedule interviews in February. You'll start to receive notification from us via email in late January, early February. I put interview conference weekend, that's what's in blue, February 16th and 17th, because if you are here in the US, we're not expecting those outside the US to come, then that's an opportunity to come visit our campus and meet and do their interviews in person. So if you can handle that, block those weekends off. If not, then I'll be setting up for you to have Zoom interviews, and that works fine as well. And you'll get 2 of those with faculty or a faculty and a staff member. In early March, we're going to come back as a committee. We're going to make those final decisions of who's admitted, and we're also then going to make those as scholarship decisions. And I'll cover that in just a second. The deadline for you, as those offers go out around March 10th, 15th, will be to make that decision on April 15th to accept or decline that offer. And then do us a favor and make sure that you've told everybody that you've applied to what your decision was. And don't leave those schools hanging, because a lot of times we're having to email people out and say, what did you decide? The deadline is done. And there's a possibility we can drop that scholarship because we may have someone else waiting on the wait list that we need to admit. It moves fast and furious in April 15th. So make sure that you are contacting us. All this information is on the website at admissions. So just go to that part. Now, as far as the stats, and then we'll cover funding. Enrollment for this year, we were aiming for about 80, which we did have. but several of our international students had some visa issues and they didn't end up coming. So we enrolled 75. We had an average GPA of a 3.44. Average age usually is between 24 and 25. This year was the higher. Women making up this class a little higher this year is at 59%. Most times it's somewhere around that 50%. Students of color represented 25% of our class. International was 16%. Now, I will say with that international number, many of them are admitted. The issue is either getting the visas or the affordability part of it. How much scholarship we give them in the letter is how much we have. And many will come back to us going, do you have other opportunities? And we'll tell them, no, we don't. This is all we have. So unless they can find some outside sponsorship or scholarships, our international numbers are not going to be as high as maybe some other schools that offer GA and TA teaching positions. So non-residents makes up about 27%. Most of the time that's closer to 40. And then average work experience, you're going to notice that most of our students are here between 0 to 3 years. I put here 0 to 2, it's 59%. 21% if they've got 2 to 5, and 20% if they're 5 years or more. But our professors are a mix of seasoned practitioners, those who have been former city managers, those who have been auditors, those who have been doing the work in the field with the nonprofits. And there's a mix of those who are academics. Maybe they focus on education issues or health policy issues or analytical methods and quant work. The average class size, I'm going to put it around 16. Most of our classes max at 20, but I've seen classes that are as few as 7, right? So you're going to get a good mix. Some classes have to push out at 25 just to get everybody in it that's interested in, but you're really going to get to know your classmates and your faculty very well. All right, last 2 slides for me. MPSA funding. So we're going to talk about the financial awards. In year 1, keep in mind, every single MPSA student, if you're a full-time student, which most of you are, you're going to receive some level of scholarship from us. And if you are not from Texas, out of state, or an international student, you will receive a non-resident waiver. Now, 24 credit hours for the year, that amounts to about $12,700. So I'll show you the cost in a second, which is quite high, but when you knock off that out-of-state waiver and a scholarship, it makes it more affordable. It's just you're still going to have some money you're going to have to come up with. Now, scholarships that we offer are typically called Bush School scholarships, and they range from $1,000 up to $15,000. There are a few awards that we can give that are worth higher amounts. With the Master of Public Service, that's one, and it's $29,000 roughly for a grad merit award. There's a couple more that are more diversity focused that are done through nomination at Texas A&M, but they're all for domestic students, and it's for a handful. So the majority of our students are receiving somewhere between that $3,000 to $5,000 mark. I broke those amounts here. We do have a couple of students who are part-time this year, so they didn't receive funding. And then we've got 1 to 3,000, that was 35%. Now, the majority of those are 3,000. Very few students only get 1,000. 5 to 7,000 was 37%, and over 20% of our students have 10,000 or more. In the summer, if you get an unpaid position for your internship, you can receive some additional funding opportunities, and Matt can talk about those later. In year 2, your scholarship renews as long as you keep your GPA at 3.25 or better, as does that non-resident waiver. So you can apply for competitive graduate assistantships. We have both GARS and GANTS, that's researcher and non-teaching. That's the only way you can improve your funding. So it's going to depend, how did you do in your first year and what kind of fit do you have for that position? And then you're going to be working 20 hours a week for that faculty or a staff member. So that funding now becomes, if you get a GA position, about $20,000 in your second year. But remember, you've got a class of 75 and there's only about a dozen of those available. So it is competitive. Some of our students do work on campus through student jobs. You can apply for those through Jobs for Aggies once you're a student here. So there is some way of just, again, international students, you guys have some unique situations you might have to work with, what kind of visa you're coming in on. And the final part for me, this MPSA funding and cost. So financial aid from Texas A&M is Graduate Merit Fellowship, which is dispersed, I talked about earlier. And if you're from Texas, there's also a Texas Aggie Graduate Grant that students can apply for that gives them an opportunity for an additional $5,000. But most of our students are filling out FAFSA, taking out a few loans to help them. They're looking for campus jobs, student worker positions. Some of those can be here on our campus. But we're looking at the cost. Now, the estimated tuition and required fees, $13,000 for residents, and it goes all the way up to $31,000 for international students. But then I'm using that $5,000 average of both the award and that non-resident waiver. And so that amount in blue becomes much more manageable in terms of tuition and fees, but it's definitely not free. It is something you're going to have to figure out, how can I cover this amount of money? And that's where students are doing the work and the loans. Or they're applying for outside scholarships or sponsorships by their companies. And so we can help with that. And then the cost of living, which is going to be wherever you live, it's reasonable at $21,000 a year. But again, it's a hunk of money. So, all right, that's my part on this. I appreciate it. I'm going to now pass this on to Matt to talk about professional development for about the next 10, 15 minutes, and then we'll take on questions.
Perfect. Thank you, Catherine. Well, howdy, everybody. Glad to see you all on here today. As Catherine mentioned, I'm going to talk to you about professional development, how we help our students who come to the Bush School get ready to then enter the job market. Also, how you go about finding internships and just some other things that help you develop. Maybe you've got previous work experience, you're pretty comfortable with the job search, but you still want to develop as an individual. You're a lifelong learner, and that's what you want to continue doing through graduate school. So I know I heard Catherine mentioned some of the assessments like Myers-Briggs type indicator and Strengths Finder. We use those in our leadership program, and Holly Kasperbauer will walk you through that. Also, how knowing about yourself and knowing your personality and your strengths, how does that impact how you manage your time, how you manage your stress? We're not going to sugarcoat it for you here. Graduate school can be stressful to people. And so we want to make sure that you're prepared by knowing who you are, knowing a little bit more about yourself, and then also knowing how that information impacts the teams that you're working on and the work that you're doing in capstones and other projects as you go throughout your graduate program here. We also have a couple of staff members and faculty members who work with our students through our writing program. They're not going to write your papers for you, obviously. They're not going to even edit all your work for you, but they're going to teach you how to assess what the faculty member is looking for through the assignment, and then how to evaluate your audience for that paper or that project, and then do your best work in that. So they are going to help you become a better writer. They also offer a program called the Medal of Excellence, where you can create a writing portfolio coupled with that leadership program and meeting some requirements for the leadership program. If you do both of those, you can complete the Medal of Excellence program, and you get a really nice medallion that you can wear at graduation that reflects you did a little bit extra work than the other people in your program. We have a number of speakers. If you spend any amount of time on our website or looking at any of our research institutes, centers, or programs, you will see a whole host of faculty guests that come in, national and regional speakers, plus we bring in a number of alumni to talk about their careers and to actually recruit for their employers. And so we've got a really robust speaker series and a number of different options for you, both here in College Station and in our Washington, D.C. teaching site. We do have not only the Texas A&M University Library System that is really robust and has a number of resources for you, but we're also next door to the George Bush Presidential Library. So you can access, for certain research projects, you can access their archives. If you're interested in international travel, maybe you've done that before, maybe you haven't, but you're interested in doing a study abroad trip related to public or international affairs, we do typically have at least one program each year, sometimes two different trips going on. Those are typically in May between your first and second year, and right before your internship kicks off. We do have some reciprocal exchange programs where you can spend a semester studying in those countries. Those are still kind of hit and miss sometimes based on COVID. People are still figuring out how many people want to do a semester-long program. And so those would be something that we'd work with you specifically on. And then as Catherine mentioned earlier, our capstone project is at the end of your, or as part of your second year for public administration. It's a year-long capstone project, but sometimes those are with international clients. So you may have the opportunity to participate and travel internationally for that. We have a number of research centers and institutes that I just mentioned a few minutes ago. There are 3 that are primarily related to the public administration program. Does not mean that you can't interface with the other programs that are available, the other research centers and institutes here, but these are the 3 that our students in the MPSA program tend to gravitate towards. That's the Institute for Science, Technology, and Public Policy. The name really says it all. And the kind of work that they do. They do some water policy, they do energy policy work, science, technology, some other areas as they come up based on the research of the faculty who are engaged in that. The Mosbacher Institute for Trade, Economics, and Public Policy. Again, they did a really good job of telling you what they're about in their name. But they also sponsor students additionally for going to international trade organizations, both domestically here in the United States, typically in Washington, D.C., or internationally, and they have some additional internship funding. It's a pretty nice little stipend, and you apply for that if you meet the requirements of attending some career workshops and some things like that. Plus, they bring speakers in, and then they have these 2 programs, Global Value Chains and then Borders and Migration. And then last but certainly not least, we have a really robust Center for Nonprofits and Philanthropy and a number of faculty and staff members who are engaged in that, helping nonprofits across the community, state, and even nation with research networking and engaged opportunities there. So these institutes and centers will also bring in speakers at different times or programming. And that's a great way for you as a student to network and get to know additional people in these fields and also maybe secure internship or full-time job networking opportunities. So you're probably wondering, how do we do when it comes to careers when they graduate, when students graduate? We do have, Texas A&M has a career center on main campus that serves all undergraduate students and graduate students in most colleges. We're very fortunate that we have our own career services office here at the Bush School. That's what I came to the Bush School to do 20 years ago, and I've stayed. My responsibilities have grown, but fortunately, we've also added staff members. We have 1 staff member, Michael Cochran, who manages our employer relations. All of our employers who want to come on campus or do a video webinar about their job and internship opportunities, Mike handles that. If we've got somebody who wants to do on-campus interviewing, Mike also handles that. And then Ashley Winterroad does our career programming, so our career workshops and career advising. All 3 of us, myself, Ashley, and Michael, all work with students individually to provide career advising. We also partner closely with our leadership development program and with our writing program to make sure that students are prepared. Internship notification and funding, we send out internship opportunities. Funding, if you attend a series of 4 to 6 career workshops in the fall of your first year, then you qualify to apply for funding for your internship. That's in addition to the funding that Catherine's mentioned already. This funding is available to you if you are doing an unpaid internship. So if you're doing a paid internship, we're not going to give you additional funding because we've got limited funding. But if you're doing an unpaid internship, we recognize that many public sector internships are going to be unpaid because the organizations don't have the resources to pay for an intern. And we do have some funding that will help cover some of your costs for the summer. It won't cover all of it, but it will help you out with that. Employment rates within 6 months of graduation are typically between 90 and 96% graduation employed within 6 months of graduating. We report at 6 months because that's a standard across graduate programs in public and international affairs that we maintain, so you can compare apples to apples. And as you can see from this chart below, our top 3 employers are state and local government, nonprofit organizations, and the federal government. 2022, we saw a little bit of an increase back in federal government hiring this last year. Our nonprofits stays in that pretty close range there of 20 to 25% typically. And then state and local, now that's a combined number, but state and local has been really one of our strongest sectors for people. We do send people to the government contractor space, typically federal government contractors is what we're referring to there. Private sector, continuing education, that's typically someone going on for a PhD, possibly for law school, but usually it's a PhD in another field. And then other, that's usually people going back to a previous career field. Maybe they were an educator before and they go back to the classroom. Career sectors and employers, just to give you a feel, this is not comprehensive, but it gives you an idea. Here locally, Brazos County Council of Governments, city governments across the state of Texas, our top employers over the last 20 years are the city of College Station, city of Sugar Land, and some other places in Texas. But also you'll see the Texas Senate, Texas House of Representatives are also some of our top employers, but you'll see some places outside of the state of Texas, Georgia, Kansas, Nebraska, New York State, Ohio, and then a number of state agencies, both in the state of Texas and outside of the state of Texas, ones that are listed here in the state of Texas. Federal government, our top federal employer for the MPSA program is actually the U.S. Government Accountability Office. We just did some additional data review for the last 20 years of where our graduates are going to work, and GAO was one of our top ones. You're also going to see people going into the Army, both civilian and military careers there, and then you see some of the others that are listed here. Nonprofit organizations, the Arts Council of the Brazos Valley, it's a local nonprofit organization here. Others that may seem a little more familiar, Houston Food Bank. We've also worked closely with the Austin Food Bank and other places. Samaritan's Purse, a pretty large international NGO that does a lot of work across the country, especially in Africa and the Middle East. The UN World Food Program, United Way of Metro Dallas is one listed here, but we've also sent graduates to the United Way of Houston, to our local United Way of Brazos Valley, and then private sector companies, some you may or may not be familiar with here, STP Nuclear Operating Company, Optiv. We've had some others who've done work with Accenture and other companies like Deloitte. Student groups, we have a number of student organizations that are specific to the Bush School. I will tell you that if you don't see anything that interests you here, there are over 1,000 student organizations at Texas A&M University, plus there's a community that you can be involved in. Both the cities of Bryan and College Station have a very robust philanthropy and public sector feel to them. So a lot of opportunities there. Public Service Organization is one of our student organizations, does exactly what their name says. They go out and they work with Habitat for Humanity or with a local literacy organization, with the Rotary Club here to do some programming. We have a Bush School Graduate Student Government Association. They do things like host tailgates before all of the home football games. They also have an intramural program where you can go out and play intramural sports. That's also where our intramural team comes up each year to play the LBJ school over at UT Austin in a softball game. By the way, we have the winning record in that series of over 20 plus years. International City and County Management Association and the Texas City County Management Association. We have students involved in that. The Association of Fundraising Professionals, for those of you interested in nonprofit work, having fundraising skills is important. You want to improve your foreign language or you want to be involved in cultural organizations, we have a student organization that does that as well. An Ambassadors Council that serves as the host for all of our guests who come here to different speaker events, programming, workshops, conferences that we do. And I've already mentioned intramural and athletics. So that gives you a pretty good idea of the types of opportunities that are available for you. I'm going to turn it back over to Catherine to wrap things up for today.
Thanks, Matt. All right, so at this time, I'm going to end the actual recording and I'm going to shut that down. And then in the meantime, if you guys want to start thinking about some of the questions and answers, before I shut the recording down, I did want to remind people to get a hold of us. This is either myself or Ashley Treadway, who works with me in Bush School admissions. There is our email and there is our phone number. Please, at any point, if you're struggling with parts of the application or have a question, we're happy to help with that. If you are looking at the online Executive Master of Public Service or the certificates, and maybe you decide, hey, I want to know more about them, you can reach out to the Office of Extended Education, Bush School Online. And then the Washington, D.C. office is more international affairs focused for their programs, but you can get a hold of them in Bush School, D.C. if you want to. And then upcoming events, just to remind you, next Tuesday, we'll have one with Student Life. So I'll have about 4 or 5 students who will just talk about what it's like to be a graduate student here. They'll take that whole 45 minutes to an hour, just answering questions, going through certain sections about living here, about classes, the work-life balance. I'm going to come back on with Ashley on Thursday, October 5th to cover very specific admissions information. Matt's going to come back on October 18th to cover some more about career services. Financial aid on Wednesday, November the 8th is very different than what I'm covering here. I will cover just a tad bit of how we work, but mainly mine is about how graduate education can be funded. And how some additional websites you guys can find some scholarship opportunities for. It's just very helpful. It also lives on the website under our past webinars. If you want to go look at the one, if you can't wait till November 8th, I have the one from last year up as well. And then we'll do some overviews back. We also have Ask Us Anything chat hours that are every 2 weeks. I have them on the calendar. Just drop in during that hour and ask us whatever you want. We're just sitting there waiting on people to come through and see us. And then I have open houses if you find yourself in the College Station area. So I've got my first one on Friday, and then I'll have one each month that you're welcome to sign up. I just can't host you if you're not living here and going to be in Texas. So those, you have to go to the webinars. All right, so having said that, I'm going to leave this screen up and I'm going to go ahead and turn off the recording. So thank you guys that aren't going to hang out, and we appreciate having you.